Variety. We are back with Jim Hunter. Talk about some movies here, but first off, we'll get their box office results.
Yeah, some pretty interesting results at the box office.
You hinted to that in your email to me.
Yeah. So, of course, winning the box office was Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness in its third week at 32.3. This is a approximately 50% drop, a little bit over 50% there. So this seems like a normal drop for a big event film. It's within that 40 to 60 range that we often talk about. But then the question is whether this is sort of too little too late. It was only $32.3 million in that third week. And so that's coming after a pretty significant drop in its second week. So those are the main questions about Doctor Strange, whether or not the 32 is enough to sort of propel it into the Spider-Man No Way Home territory. And I think that unfortunately, because because of that second week drop, because it's still dropping about 50%, those Spider-Man legs for Doctor Strange 2 are kind of out of the picture.
I'd say so.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah. That said, it's still the #1 movie of the summer.
Sure.
And it's still doing quite well. The question is what will happen this weekend when a film that's coming out that is in Doctor Strange's demographic, whether or not that is a film that'll steal some money from Doctor Strange's
That's a good point.
share.
What about Downton Abbey? I mean, I know it's 16 million. Is that good for them?
It's good. It's not great. It's somewhat below what we got from the original Downton Abbey, but then that was in non-COVID-19 era. What's really interesting about the 16 million number is that is largely driven by a demographic that has been slow to return to theaters since the pandemic.
Okay.
So only $16 million, but that $16 million looks a little different than Doctor Strange's 32, because Doctor Strange is feasting on a demographic that has already shown that it's willing to return to movie theaters. Downton Abbey, A New Era, it's an older demographic, female demographic. That demographic has not been as willing to return to theaters as others.
So let's talk about this movie you mentioned last week. It's just one word, Men.
Yeah, so this debuts on our chart at $3.2 million. I didn't get to see this movie last week, but I have seen it now, and I can tell you that it is about as Alex Garland and about as A24 as you could possibly get. This movie is very weird. It is expressly weird. The entire movie is a metaphor, and if you try to look at this movie in any kind of practical way, then you are going to be lost. You are going to be shocked by the third act, which goes off the rails and jumps the shark. Every metaphor that you could possibly use for a movie that surprises you, that is the third act of this movie. That said, it is about the various ways in which men emotionally manipulate women and physically threaten women with just their presence. It is it's a metaphorical and a visceral rendering of what, in Alex Garland's view, that must be like. So I think that there's substance here. Whether or not that substance was enough for me to recommend it, not really. I think that a lot of these metaphors didn't work for me, and a lot of the film seemed more shock value than developing the theme and the substance and the characters that really worked for me. So ultimately, I give it a 2.5. That is the highest I can go without recommending it. I think it's an interesting film. I'm glad I saw it, but I don't necessarily think the rest of you should, unless your taste is in the abjectly weird, in which case I have a movie for you.